everybody. This is a great honor. I am here post Cinequest to talk about one of my favorite films from Cinequest, Death of a Rock Star, with the filmmaker Röcket Stähr. So I don't know if I needed to pronounce the umlauts or not, but
no. In rock and roll, we use umlauts sparingly, but not sparingly. I'm thinking of the right word, and nobody uses them to enunciate.
Yeah, it's all about
Motorhead, Motley Crue. They just throw them around,
Well, and that shows some of your influences. Because I think I met you in a lounge, and you and another filmmaker or actor were talking about great rock shows you'd seen, like in the 80s, 70s, So, and obviously, with the Röcket persona, you wear your rock influences on your face, not just on your sleeve.
On my vest.
So this is a film that stop me if I credit you with something that you didn't do, which is okay. So you've composed this rock opera, you've animated this film, so designed the characters as well, directed this, voiced most of it. You have one other singer involved. So my first question really is, what can't you do?
I can't stand on my head. I can't. I don't know. I'm sure quite a lot of things I can't do. I didn't build the computer that I did it on. I didn't write the animation program. No, I guess in all seriousness, of the things that I didn't do in the film, I didn't play the strings. I did orchestrate the whole thing. I'm a self-taught composer, but of course I had a string quartet that I used for it, and I didn't play the trumpet, trombone, or French horn, or the clarinet or oboe. I wrote all those parts, but I had real live musicians play them, and the drums as well. I wrote all that, but had an actual drummer play them. So those are the things in the film that I didn't do. And those particular parts were done in a studio, which had an engineer in them and all that kind of stuff, even though I produced the sessions. But yeah, all the rest I did myself. I played all the guitar, piano, bass, sang everything except for those 3 songs that Abby Ahmad sang, who did an absolutely wonderful job with her parts. And and then I spent 8 years animating the thing on my own.
Oh, really? Okay, so I didn't realize that, except my question was going to be like, did COVID make it hard to record? But 8 years animating this.
Oh, yeah, this whole project took 13 years about from beginning to end. The very basic tracks of about, I think, 5 of the songs that are in it, or 4, were started as like a recording, or I guess a demo, but a little 6-song CD I did about 13 years ago. And that's still in the movie. It was before I decided to turn it all into an opera. And that was the start of the whole project, really. And so, yeah, they started doing the recording. That's how long ago I recorded the strings, and, the horns and all that were done, in the late 2000s, early 2010s, I guess, over the course of about 5 years. I'd have to, work for a while to save up to pay them, and then book the session, and then record their parts, and then et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, for 26 songs. And then I had all the music recorded pretty much. To skip ahead a little bit, I ended up redoing I did record all of my own the vocals and the guitars and the piano and bass back then, but the technology changed so much, the home recording technology, over the time that I animated it, that I ended up buying new equipment for my home recording stuff and redid all of my guitars, bass, and vocals one more time before I mixed the whole thing on my own here in my little apartment. And that was pretty tough to do, to re-record all that stuff that I had done years ago. So yeah, and in that between time, I animated the entire film from beginning to end.
Yeah, so I have to ask you, what drove you? Why not?
Insanity.
Not to call you insane. If you are, then it's brilliance as well. Fine line, always a fine line between. But
when I've crossed.
It could have been a concept album, like I'm old enough to remember when that's what, that Tommy was an album, not a movie and not a Broadway show.
Right.
Jesus Christ Superstar was an album.
Yep, was a record first. It was a single even before it was a record.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm saying about Chess. So why did you decide I've got to make a film instead of just put out this really good concept album?
I don't know. I guess because, I'd been doing music for a long time before that. I'd record 5 or 6 songs, demo, try to put it out, try to get some traction on it. And, nothing would ever gain any ground, partly because I'd keep switching gears on my own, like, which is kind of evident by the music you hear in the movie. Like, I'd be in a punk band for a little while. I did my music where I did lots of orchestrations in the 90s. For a little while, I had a little acoustic guitar project I did. And then when I first started out, I had just a regular straightforward rock band. And I just kind of kept changing directions and would just sort of record and not do a whole lot with it. And I guess I felt with this, I didn't just want to do the recording and put it out there, because people just, they don't tend to listen or gravitate, I guess, if I'm explaining that too well, to new music in the kind of stuff that I do anymore.
The album shifted. The concept of people listening, right,
to a whole record all the way through isn't the kind of thing people generally do anymore, and that's the kind of music that I'm into. And in addition to the fact that I just do music that sounds like it was done, 40 to 50 years ago, and I'm not really into modern sounds or type of music. So I just figured, well, how would I get anybody to really listen to that in the first place? And I figured people, if they're interested in watching something, they're going to listen. They listen and will end up hearing it because they want to see a full movie. Whether that's naive sounding or not, I don't know. And since I had the idea for the story anyway, because that was the whole basis of it, I figured, well, I want to make the movie. And it wasn't even really supposed to be an animated thing at first. I could have been, but I thought, well, maybe puppets, maybe real people, so it was something that grew into me being like, well,
could we see this as a staged puppet show?
Yeah.
Now you just filled. Like, oh my God, I would love to see.
Yeah. That was one of the ideas. I thought, well, how would I do it? Maybe I could just make sock puppets and, any idea, just because I've never made a movie or thought of doing that before. So I just had, these were different, just quick things that you run through of ideas before you settle and decide, okay, this is what I'm going to do. And even as far as the record itself goes, before it was necessarily an opera, I was just I had spent a lot of money on making the initial 5 or 6 songs recorded and did one show, and it cost me so much money. I was like, well, if I'm going to spend this much money on my music, I might as well do something for posterity, that lasts more than one night and one 6-song thing. So at first I was just going to record a whole bunch of my stuff and put it out. And then I kind of decided, well, if I'm going to do that, people have told me for years that my music should be like a rock opera or something. So maybe I'll make it that finally.
Yeah. And you mentioned, it's music from influence definitely from the 60s and 70s. And one song actually says it, like you put in Issues of Cream and it's a little Bowie, a little Mott the Hoople and all this. And you've got Queen as well. And it was taking me back and realizing, oh, that sounds like ELO. And then I thought, that's the first time I've realized how much ELO took from other people, listening to it all blend through.
It's all like that. I mean, even Queen, and I believe that they stated this in some interviews early on, from what I recall, felt like they were trying to build off where the Beatles left off with Abbey Road, with all the harmonies, the layered harmonies. That record, the Abbey Road, you think of songs like Because, and it's just all those beautiful layered harmonies of John, Paul, and George. And Queen was sort of trying to take that and go to another level. So it's like we're all kind of pulling off the things that influence us and trying to do something different with it,
Yeah. In watching it, and I was just checking on CNN and seeing, what's happening what's legally happening in the South right now. I feel like a lot of concept albums, at least, and if you merge that between concept albums and rock operas, have familiar themes. And we've got a pendulum that keeps going. It's religious repression, stifling creative freedom. You've set this, I realized, to basically 200 years after it sounds like the Beatles really took hold.
Yeah,
You know,
that's
so,
why it's in 64. Yeah.
yeah, I just noticed that yesterday listening to it.
Yeah.
And I went, boom, that's why. You know, so you've got there. It's the pendulum's gone again. Why do you think one that is such a, a lush source of inspiration for rock, but why does the pendulum keep swinging to it?
Um, I don't know. You know, it's interesting because it's obviously the undercurrent there. It's a political piece, and it's something I'm not even sure how comfortable I am talking about it, even though I'm very opinionated on my own personal Facebook page or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started doing this project, it was even a little more blatant of the political parts to it. You know, both on sort of tweaking the right and the left politically. And a couple advisors, they were kind of producers at the time I was working with, were, you know, kind of advised me to sort of smooth things out a little, generalize them a little more so that it's not, you know, doesn't turn people away too much, you know, so they kind of see what they want to see in it. And so I did that. So you can still get sort of the political stuff out of it. But it's, what I found is at least when I did the original script and even when I was first showing it to people, like I have fans that are both on the left and the right of the political spectrum and in the middle. And they kind of all sort of see what they want to see in it, in a way, of the part of those repressions that that they're into, or that they might disagree with this part, but they're into that part, with all the other things that drag you down in life. And any kind of like a authoritarian regime or society or government to any degree really is going to try to clamp down on that because they consider it dangerous or a threat to their control. And I think rock and roll has always been a bit of or more than a bit of a response to that. So
Yeah,
if that makes sense.
it does. And, you know, I think more it becomes a cultural thing because this has been coming up a lot in the last few months to remember that in the 80s, it was Tipper Gore who led censorship and, you know, from the so-called left.
Yeah.
So, but your film also brings up an interesting, I think it's about 2/3 of the way through another idea, which is that idolatry in any form starts stifling free speech. Like there's a frustration that everybody is worshiping worshiping Rocky Star, not doing what was hoped was that it would be
exactly. Yeah, there's an irony in there. Yeah.
So what do you hope people will take away from what?
You know, I don't think I hope they take away one thing or the other for it. I mean, if you asked me this 10 years ago or, you know, or maybe even 6 or 7, I may have had a stronger sense of, yes, I want them to get this from it or get that from it. But I've come to be a little bit more like, I just want them to have fun. I just want them to enjoy watching it. And if they even hate or don't agree with any of the politics in it, then I hope they enjoy the love story, because that's ultimately, it's a love story and a love letter to rock and roll also. And I made that kind of the main thing. So that's what I really just hope they take away from it, and why I, in a way, wish I didn't do a political piece, even though I couldn't help but, and I probably will in the future. But I just want people to have fun. I miss that about entertainment, about music and movies, that you can just go and escape and get away and look at the pretty colors and the sounds and attach in that way, because that's still connection. People kind of consider that to be disconnecting, but I actually consider that to be kind of connecting. I connect with the music I hear, even when it's not political or whatever. It makes me feel something. Mm-hmm. So if anything, that's what I hope they get. If they get something from the political messages, then great. You know, if it leads them to question authority a little more, or, you know, to say, yeah, maybe rights are a little contradictory to some things like democracy or certain like things like that, you know, not to get into the details, and that's cool. But if they don't, and if they disagree with certain things, I mean, I have friends that are very religious who really love my movie, even though it tweaks and, you know, a religious authoritarian regime. I have friends that are on the left.
That's not the same as being religious, you know. I mean, that's
right.
You know,
I agree, and that's the thing. I'm not really putting down religion or knocking that. I'm putting down trying to force your religion on other people, or that kind of thing. Right. But so I don't really presuppose that they should get something or want to. I don't want to propagandize the people or indoctrinate. I just expressed myself through the film to what I believe or want. And really, ultimately, I hope they can just sort of put on the CD or watch the movie and have fun, even if they disagree with some of the ideas in it. Because quite frankly, for somebody with the kind of political views that I have, that's kind of how I have to go about the world anyway. Actually, most movies or music, or even, you know, my musical heroes, whatever, put out records or movies that have very much political ideas or views that I don't agree with at all. And if I let that guide whether I'm going to like something or not or enjoy it, I wouldn't be able to enjoy anything, you know? So I just have to appreciate it for the art that it is, you know, and go about it that way.
And you gave me a couple of good segues here. So I've put a little banner up on the bottom, and I just want to say that people, I heartily recommend, I tested this on my wife yesterday, that the album, double CD, is available at deathofarockstore.com. Reasonably priced, and will be autographed by Röcket Stähr. So, and it is also available. I had initially picked it up on Amazon through digital, and so that's what I played. So I'm looking forward to my copy. Just to say that. But you mentioned connection as well, and so you know you did an evening. When this pandemic is, I don't know, I don't want to say over. I mean, I hope it will be, but let's be honest, that we'll all still be taking precautions. Would you go on a Röcket Stähr tour?
No. No, I mean that, like, you know, just as far as like, I have no plans for something like that. If things went well, and, you know, I did get picked up by a distributor, and over time this gained, you know, a cult following, which is what a lot of people seem to think that it's going to do over time. And there's demand, then sure, I would love to play live, you know, this music and other music that I have. But I don't have any plans for that at the moment. So, you know, but who knows? I'm very open to what the future has in store.
I'm one of those that see a cult following. You know, I really, it's one of a handful of films that Cinequest has shown over the last few years where I've thought, man, I wish I had the energy to stay up till midnight and watch this with a bunch of people in a theater, you know. But you've mentioned, you know, that there are some hopes in the future distributor. We hope that Cinequest will be, and you are accepted to other festivals as well, right?
I am. I've been turned down by a lot of festivals, so I don't have a whole lot left that I'm submitted to. But yeah, I think there's a handful, maybe 6, 7, or that I'm still waiting to hear back from. And yeah, and we'll see how those go. I mean, like ones like I'm going to be in Fantaspell coming up, and I hadn't submitted to that, so that just kind of came from.
They found it and they liked it.
They liked it and got a hold of me. So who knows? You know, maybe something like that will come up. You know, yeah.
To help build the cult, you that sounds really bad. But to make it a midnight movie or whatever you want to call it, because I don't think midnight movie means much anymore when you can watch anything at any time. But one fun together. One thing you do, and so I want to finish up asking this, is you provide the lyrics as you go along. And I called this out in my review that you're built for a sing-along.
Yeah.
You know? So why did you make that choice?
That was, again, kind of went back to when I had a couple of friends who were kind of, you know, working sort of as producers, advisors. They're credited at the end of the film as advisors. And when we watched some of the early couple of scenes that I had done, which were much rougher looking than what you see in the finished movie, on a couple of them I had put those word bubbles, because that's just sort of how I saw it in my head, as kind of like you mentioned in your review, like a web comic brought to life. That was sort of part of my vision originally. But then I had done a couple scenes without them as well, and kind of felt like, the lyrics might be a little distracting on scene. Maybe I won't have them on there. But then after watching it, they, you know, part of what we all thought was that when they weren't there, you kind of missed having them. So the decision, you just had to decide one way or the other. And at that point I decided, okay, that's how I'm going to move forward with this. And there's 2 songs where I don't have them on the screen, because I would just sort of, again, made the decision as I went along with what felt right and what didn't. And those particular two songs, since the lyrics weren't necessarily important to the story or what went on, and I kind of almost found those distracting as to what I wanted to portray in those scenes, I just figured I'd left the lyrics out outside of like one or two words that are on the screen.
I picked that up. Like if I was going to sing along, I didn't because I didn't know this first time. But at least one of them was kind of this rock anthem, and I knew that I was like I had picked up the chorus. That's all I'd wanted.
Yeah,
But I honestly think it's a brilliant touch because the thing that happens at the revival house, art houses, is you go to a Sound of Music sing along or a little. Not to compare this to the Sound of Music, it's not the same.
I think things lasted 60 years or whatever. I'm not going to complain being compared to that or anything.
Yeah. All right. So, I mean, you can have the sing along built in, and I love that. So, again, for people watching this, deathofarockstore.com, you can pick up this CD, a double CD, and hoping that Death of a Rockstar is coming to a theater near you at some point in the future. And if not, VOD, and when you can have friends over, bring your friends over and watch this thing, and it's super fun. So thank you for making time tonight.
Well, thank you very much. I appreciate that so much. Thank you for having me.
Thanks for watching. Hit the subscribe button to make sure you don't miss out on any Fanboy Planet videos. And remember, use your powers for good.